Welcome to 8th grade science. This is your science teacher next year, Mr. Barkland. I have a special report for you today about what you will be studying next year. Hello and welcome to 8th grade science, young class of 2017. I'm not here to be able to talk to you about what science is going to be like next year, so I am recording this short video just to give you a little preview. I'm actually at jury duty right now, administering justice to the fine citizens of Denver County. But if you have any questions that don't get answered today in this video, feel free to stop that tall guy walking around the Grayland halls in a white lab coat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. So 8th grade science starts off with just an investigation into the nature of science and scientific inquiry, probably similar to a lot of things you've been studying over the years here at Grayland. But we're going to be studying how we make graphs. We're going to be studying how we make hypotheses, how we really design investigations. Some of the labs involved in that, you may have remembered seeing 8th graders running around with little paper helicopters. That's one aspect of how we talk about scientific design. Another thing we do is try and design a submarine out of a film canister and some Alka-Seltzer and some pennies that has to achieve a specific challenge. That's another lab that we do there. There's a few other ones involved in that as well, but that's going to be the first couple weeks of school is just getting used to how we really do science before we start studying some specific content. After that, I believe we'll be going on a southeast trip down to Atlanta and to Memphis and Birmingham, and once we come back from that, we're going to start our study of physics. We will spend pretty much the end of September all the way through Thanksgiving break on physics. That's classical mechanics, that is Newtonian physics, so we're going to be studying a lot of motion, a lot of forces. That involves labs like these remote control cars that you may have seen, these buggies, using that to study velocity and acceleration. We will be dropping things again, marbles from the banister of the second story, just to test out the terminal velocity of a falling object. We will study friction as it relates to skateboards and other objects in motion. So there are a lot of labs that we do in physics that are very hands-on as well. And that's kind of one of the themes of the course that you're going to notice is I really like to get into the lab. I think that's the best way to learn, is to get your hands a little dirty, whether that's physics or some of the other subjects we study like chemistry and biology. So you have to come ready to learn, and if you miss a day, then you might be coming outside of class time to make up that lab on your own or with another partner. Once we are done with our study of physics, right after Thanksgiving, we will start studying chemistry, and that's really the largest unit of the year. I was a chemistry major. I was a high school chemistry teacher a while before I came here, so that's really one of my passions is chemistry. There are so many fun experiments you can do, so many really neat things you can learn about how atoms and molecules work and react. So we are going to spend a lot of time on that pretty much all the way from Thanksgiving break until spring break. So we just finished up that unit. That involved things like micro rockets, where we filled pipette bulbs with hydrogen and oxygen gas to figure out which combination of gases gave us the best rocket launch. That involved labs with all kinds of different metals reacting with acids to study which ones are most reactive. That involves actually designing a battery out of pennies. You may have noticed some of the 8th graders frantically scraping pennies on the sidewalk outside. That did involve a homemade battery that we made that was able to power a light, turn on a calculator, turn on a watch. So that's one of the things we're going to take a look at as well, is the nature of electricity. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg there with chemistry. There's a lot that we're going to get to. We will also be using the Bunsen burners a lot in this class rather than alcohol burners. That's a pretty major component of what when we start studying chemistry is learning proper technique of how to turn on, adjust, properly use the Bunsen burners, and we will be using them throughout probably 6 or 7 labs throughout the few months while we are studying chemistry. You may also notice that the room smells like vinegar this morning. we just started our study of biology, and the very first experiment that we start with there is the nature of a cell membrane. And it turns out that an egg is a form of cell, and if we can dissolve that calcium carbonate outer shell of the egg, then all that's left is a semi-permeable membrane. It means that it's a membrane that liquid can transfer or travel through. So maybe you can even take a quick look in the lab just to see what some of those eggs look like. But then the 8th graders are going to be putting those eggs into a couple of different solutions: a hypotonic solution of distilled water, a hypertonic solution of corn syrup or saturated salt water, and they're going to see what happens to that egg when it's put in those different solutions. That's a process called osmosis. You may have heard of that before. But that's an example of what we start studying in 8th grade in our biology unit. And you might also notice all of the microscopes are out over there. Those we use to study the nature of cells, some of the processes that go on inside of cells. I know you guys have used microscopes earlier this year. We will continue to do that, to learn proper technique and to look at some single-celled organisms, some protists, protozoans that you may be familiar with from 7th grade science as well. We will also study DNA and genetics and learn a little bit about what makes humans who we are in terms of our parents and our children and our ancestors and all that. So just to kind of recap, we start the year learning about how to do science in general, and then we will be studying physics, we will be studying chemistry, we will be studying biology, and all of those subjects we're studying it a little bit more on the micro scale. What I mean by that is when you've studied biology before, you may have done dissections of, I don't know what you may have dissected, but you may have taken something apart. And that's not really what we do in 8th grade science. We're studying cell biology, so things that are very, very, very small, and DNA, which is smaller than a cell as well. When we study chemistry, we're looking at atoms and we're looking at molecules, which are even smaller than cells. And when we study physics, we're thinking very conceptually in terms of friction and forces like friction and gravity and Newton's laws and velocity and accelerations. There's a lot of mathematics involved there, and these are very conceptual topics rather than just kind of something you can maybe put your hands around. It's something you have to put your mind around. So I'm hoping that will be a challenge for you, but I hope that is something that you find fulfilling as well. Like I said, feel free to pull me aside in the hallways and ask me a question. I would be happy to do so. And I hope that you have a great close to your 7th grade career. Thanks.